Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today's video is all about the top 10 boxers from the 1950s. It is hard to narrow down the best boxers from this era, as there were so many great fighters. We will be looking at their accomplishments and the impact they had on the sport of boxing. From the heavyweight champions to the lightweights, these boxers had a lasting impact on the sport. So let's take a look at the greatest boxers of the 1950s. Number 10. Gene Fullmer. Fullmer was in his prime during the decade's second half. He ducked nobody and fought a murder's row of opponents. That list included wins over Sugar Ray Robinson, Carmen Basilio, Gil Turner, Paul Pender, Rocky Castellani, Ralph Tiger Jones, Del Flanagan, and Spider Webb. Number 9. Carmen Basilio. Basilio was terrific the entire 1950s. He owned a win over Sugar Ray Robinson and beat the likes of Ike Williams, Billy Graham, Gil Turner, Tony DeMarco, Johnny Saxton, and Art Aragon. He finished the decade off losing to Gene Fullmer in a classic battle. Number 8. Harold Johnson. Harold Johnson is one of the most underrated fighters in boxing history. Johnson was one of the greatest light heavyweights in boxing history. He beat Archie Moore. He also lost a couple to Moore. He owned wins over ranked heavyweights such as Bob Satterfield and Nino Veltz. He also hit the great Ezzard Charles in a brilliant battle fought over the light heavyweight weight limit. Number 7. Sandy Saddler. Saddler's last significant fight was a 13th round knockout of future junior lightweight champion Flash Lord in 1956. At the age of 30, so for a little over half of the decade, Saddler was a force to be reckoned with. In 1950, he closed out his famous rivalry with Willie Pep by stopping Pep after the 7th round. Number 6. Joe Brown. Brown won the undisputed lightweight championship of the world in 1956 at the age of 30 and made 11 successful defenses of his title. The night he took on Wallace Bud Smith for the title, his 70-18-11 record, with 29 victories inside the distance, hardly hinted as someone who had the makings of an all-timer. At 30, it seemed improbable that he would suddenly find a way to move up to his sport's highest level and do so by leaps and bounds. History has largely forgotten Brown, and it's a shame because he will go down as one of the most accomplished champions in the lightweight division history. Number 5. Kid Gavilan. Gavilan was a beast in the decade's first half, and he never ducked anybody. Gavilan beat the likes of Tony Gennaro, Johnny Bratton, Billy Graham, Bobby Dykes, Gil Turner, Chuck Davey, Ralph Tiger Jones, Carmen Basilio, and Bobo Olson. The last half of the decade saw an older version of Gavilan suffer many defeats to fighters that would have had no chance against a prime Gavilan. Make no mistake, Kid Gavilan was one of the greatest boxers ever to live. Number 4. Pascual Perez. The great Pascual Perez from Argentina was 54-11 in the 50s decade. He was one of the greatest flyweight boxers of all time. He held the flyweight crown for 6 years and made 11 successful title defenses in the decade, despite starting late as a pro at age 26. The Terrier was the Olympic champion in '48 in Stockholm. Perez did not lose a fight during the 1950s until 1959. Of course, as a flyweight, the level of opposition has to be questioned, but Perez was the best in his division for almost the entire decade. Number 3. Rocky Marciano. I know many people will say Rocky was overrated, and that's not true. Sure, the heavyweight division was not loaded at this time, but how many times in history was the heavyweight division loaded? Marciano owned 2 wins over the talented Roland La Starza. The first fight was a close, controversial decision. Still, in the second fight, Marciano dominated La Starza, stopping him in the 11th round. Marciano beat Joe Louis. I know he was old, right? Well, he was favored to beat Rocky and was the #1 contender. The truth is that Louis was on an 8-fight win streak and had beaten Jimmy Bivens right before fighting Marciano. Marciano would also win the title over Jersey Joe Walcott, with a come-from-behind 13th round knockout. In the rematch, Marciano destroyed Walcott in 1 round. He owned 2 wins over Ezzard Charles, one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters in boxing history. Marciano also held wins over Lee Savold, Rex Lane, and Harry Matthews. Marciano finished his career with a 9th round stoppage of Archie Moore. Once again, people will scream that Moore was old. But the truth here is that Moore would go on as a top-level fighter and light heavyweight champion for another 5 years, going 28-1-1 for the rest of the decade. Number 2. Archie Moore. Moore had over 70 fights in the 1950s, and his only losses were to Rocky Marciano, Harold Johnson, and Floyd Patterson. He owned wins over Jimmy Bivens, Harold Johnson, Yvonne Durrell, Joey Maxim, Nino Valds, Bobo Olson, and Willie Besmanoff. Not bad for a man that was old for an entire decade. Number 1. Sugar Ray Robinson. The 1950s saw the rise of one of the greatest boxers of all time, Sugar Ray Robinson. Robinson was born in Detroit, 1921, and began his boxing career at a young age. He soon became a professional boxer in 1940, and a year later, he won the welterweight championship. Robinson was known for his agility and tactical approach in the ring, but it was his knockout power that made him legendary. He was able to knock out his opponents with a single punch. In 1951, Robinson won the middleweight championship and defended his title for 5 consecutive years. He won a total of 26 matches during this time, including 21 knockouts. In 1956, Robinson lost the middleweight title to Gene Fullmer. He then moved up to the light heavyweight division, where he won the championship in 1957. Robinson retired in 1965 at the age of 44, but his legacy lives on to this day as one of the greatest boxers of all time. These are our picks for the 10 best boxers of the 1950s. If you like this video, or if you think the ranking should be different, feel free to leave a comment. And if you are feeling really powerful, you can leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Thanks for watching.